الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة العرشه ومداد كلماته ومنتهى علمه وجميع ما شاء وخلق وذرع وبرع علم الغيب وشهادة الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة العرشه ومداد كلماته ومنتهى علمه وجميع ما شاء وخلق وذرع وبرع علم الغيب وشهادة الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. أما بعد فيقول الله تعالى في كتابه ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. صدق الله العظيم. Brothers and sisters, before we get into the Khutbah today, I want to remind all of you to turn your cell phones off or at least silence them. Alhamdulillah. For me, whenever I prepare a Jumu'ah Khutbah, the hardest part for me is not necessarily, gathering the proper verses, ayat from the Quran, or the hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the statement of the scholars. The hardest part for me is scaling down or simplifying the language and the terminology so that everyone can understand. I'm not in the business of trying to impress anyone. Some people, they use words like you may be a non-Arabic speaker, and the one you're talking to is using Arabic terminology that they know that you don't know. Trying to impress you. They're trying to make you think they know something that you don't. And I don't think that's conducive. I don't think it's beneficial for the speaker or the listener. Because if you don't understand, then what's the purpose of it? And so likewise, doing a Jumu'ah Khutbah, the hardest part for me is which way am I going to address the topic? And this week, I've decided to use a parable. I've decided to use an analogy. You know, a parable or an analogy is, instead of speaking straight what you're talking about, first you go over there. You give them the example of something that they already know and that they're already familiar with, and then you bring them back to the thing that you really want them to understand. So this is what my intention is today. I'm sure all of you are familiar or are aware of what they call identity theft. Identity theft. Usually we use this terminology when somebody steals your name, your social security number, your address, and other vital information that is exclusive to you. And they somehow pretend to be you in order to get some money or maybe evade law enforcement or something. They pretend to be you. They act like you. Maybe so they can open up an account. Maybe you have a good credit score and they don't. And so they open up a whole bunch of credit cards and buy things in your name, pretending to be you. Identity theft. Now, if you think about identity theft, you can only fool someone who doesn't know the real person. Like if someone is stealing our brother Abdul Mujib's identity, if you don't know him, and this other guy comes and says, I'm Abdul Mujib. See, look, it says so on my driver's license. I got birth certificates. He got documents. The person normally says, okay, yes, I believe you. You're Abdul Mujib. Would you like to open an account with us? Yeah, sure, yes. But if you know Abdul Mujib, I don't care if the person looks almost like him. You're like, I don't know who you're trying to fool, but you are not Abdul Mujib. How are you going to tell me who I am? He may even pretend and get real emotive with you. Who are you going to try to say I'm not who I am? Like, all right, I don't know who you are, what you're trying to do, but you're not Abdul Mujib. Matter of fact, I'm going to call Abdul Mujib. Like, listen, Abdul Mujib, there's this dude at the masjid. He looked like you from a distance, too. But he was actually pretending to be you. The point I'm trying to make is that if somebody really knows that person, you're not going to be able to fool them. I don't care what document you have. Don't care if you have the driver's license, the birth certificate, the passport, the credit cards, everything. You did complete identity theft. The downside to that, not only is it criminal, but it's usually an adverse effect on the one whose identity was stolen. Maybe the one who stole the identity, they committed some crimes or got a ticket, and obviously they're not going to show up to court. So there's Abdul Mujib driving. Whoop, whoop. He's not worried. He didn't do anything wrong. License and registration. All right, sure. License and registration. Can you step out the car, please? Yo, what's up? There's a warrant out for you. I didn't do anything. credit card fraud, this, that. Somebody used his name, and now it has an adverse effect on the real Abdul Mujib. And everyone who interacted with the fake Abdul Mujib got burned, got played, got deceived, or somehow got hurt. It's the same thing with Islamic identity theft. Islamic identity theft, what is that? Islamic identity theft is when groups of Muslims steal the identity of Islam, but the belief in and of itself is not Islamic. Brothers, can you fill up the gaps? This front row, we can move up. It looks Islamic. It dresses Islamic. It uses Islamic Arabic terminology. But if you know Islam, like, that's not Islamic. And I want to give you a verse of the Quran that is well known, which is a protection for you from Islamic identity theft. You know how if you do online banking, or you do business online, they know that there's people, their job is to steal identities, to steal critical information so that they can steal your identity. So computers, they're always offering you antivirus programs so that malware will not be installed on your computer. So malware is this thing that it just sits on your computer, you don't know it's there, and as soon as you enter information, it transmits that information back to someone you don't even know what's going on. So they have antivirus programs for that. Large companies have data breaches. Somebody hacked into their system and got the information of everyone who did business with them. So they offer protections against having your identity stolen. You can even deal with the credit bureaus. And these different companies offer protections and send you an email or give you a warning if they feel like your identity, your social security number was used in a way that you may not be aware of. And so this verse is that for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Laysa kamithlihi shay', that there is nothing like him. Wa huwa sami'ul basir. Yet he is the all-hearing, all-seeing. That is like your protection. If you understand this verse, that Allah is not like his creation. That's a principle in Islam. A lot of times we get confused because there's just too many rules. I don't care at work or with anything. A lot of people feel like, man, it's just too much. How am I going to understand all of these things? First, understand the principle. If you understand the principle, it's easy when you come to the rule. The principle is Allah is the creator. Everything is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything, not just tangible things that you can see, smell, taste, or touch. Everything, including air, including time. Time. I didn't say things that measure time, like clocks or the sun or the moon. I said time itself. Allah created time. So Allah's outside of time. There is no past, present, or future with Allah. Allah created places. Allah is outside of places. He doesn't depend on the place. So you can't put Allah in a place. Allahu mawjud bila makan. Allah exists without a place. If Allah needed a place, Where was he before he created the place? Laysa kamithlihi shay wa huwa sami'ul basir. There's nothing like Allah. Yet he is all-hearing, all-seeing. Islamic identity theft. If you remember this principle and that ayah from Surah 42 verse 11, you'll be protected. Just remember that principle. Remember that. Sometimes people may ask you, what kind of Muslim are you? Are you Sunni or Shia? Most of us will say, okay, I'm a Sunni. Sunni is actually short for something. The term when someone says they're a Sunni Muslim or Orthodox Muslim, Sunni is short for something. Sunni is short for the term Ahlul Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah. The people of the prophetic way in the community. And it's also a technical term. It's a technical term that it's like an umbrella term. What do I mean? Whether you know it or not, when someone says that they're Ahlul Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, they say their meaning, what they mean by that, is that as far as their beliefs are concerned, their beliefs are in line with two major schools of thought, the Ash'aris and the Maturidis, named after Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari and Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, both late 3rd century scholars who didn't make up any Islamic belief, they didn't add anything, they didn't contrive it. They codified what was already established and transmitted to them from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sahaba, the companions, his companions, and those who took from them, the first 3 generations. When somebody tells you that, this is what they're trying to communicate with regards to their belief, even if they don't know it. When it comes to outward practice, fiqh, what they're telling you is that they adhere to one of the 4 schools. Either they're Hanafi, they're Maliki, they're Shafi, or they're Hanbali. I know some of you sit here, no, not me. I'm going to get to you in a minute. I just follow Quran and Sunnah. Okay. When someone tells you they're Ahlul Sunnah, they're telling you they follow one of those schools of thought. These Imams didn't make up anything. They codified it. They organized it into a system. There's a difference. And when they tell you that they're Ahlul Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, or as we say for short, Sunni, they follow Islamic spiritualism or one of the Sufi paths, or what is called in Arabic tasawwuf. Like, no, I don't. I ain't no Sufi. That's right, because you've been tricked by those people who committed the crime of Islamic identity theft. And that's why you think like that. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa afdalu salat wa atammu taslim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, ورضي الله تعالى عن السادة التابعين وعلماء العاملين وأئمة الأربعة المجتهدين ومقالديهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. You know, when it comes to identity theft, and we don't necessarily, usually when we talk about identity theft, we're talking about what the examples I gave you, somebody steal your ID, your credit card, or something like that. But you have another type of identity theft. We don't call it identity theft, we call it other things. I'm sure some of you heard or seen, situations where a person grows up thinking that they're part of a family. And then something happens. Maybe an accident happens and the person needs blood, and they get the closest relative and they find out the blood don't match. In fact, the DNA don't match. Like this person may have been growing up thinking, I'm a Johnson. I belong to the Johnson family. Then something like that happens and they find out that this person is nowhere related to their parents. How did that happen? And so the person is like, now they got to do some research. Was I adopted? Sometimes the parents may be like, no, I brought you home from the hospital. Now you got to do some research. Well, we just found out that I'm not your son. I'm not your daughter. This happens a lot. Sometimes people steal babies from the hospital. They steal babies from the hospital. Swap babies. Sometimes nurses that work in the hospital, they're careless and they swap name tags. And so, people take home the wrong children. Whoever has the Khutbah on out there is distracted me. They got the speaker up real loud. It's distracted me. Hearing myself talk. So now they have to do research. They have to figure out who their real parents are. So sometimes, and a lot of times we see situations like this. Like we have that person in our family, we're like, okay, he's family. We knew him since he was a baby, but he don't look like nobody in the family. And a lot of times, it be something that happened in the hospital. Or it be something crazy happened before you was born, and only the elders in the family know. This person was molested. That person's father ain't really their father. And, the mother gave away the baby just to distance himself from the situation. A lot of times our families have crazy stuff to go on. You always wonder why that person don't look like nobody, don't act like nobody. But I knew him since I was a baby. I knew the household that they grew up in. And a lot of times the person themselves don't even know. And so when you tell that person, listen, you're not a Johnson. In fact, you look like a Smith. The person will be like, what are you talking about? I got childhood memories. I got documentation. They were like, no, I don't know what you're trying to say, but that's my mother and that's my father. And this is my family. And then you have to say, listen, I know this is hard for you, but just look at the DNA. You're not a match. Check it. And this is the case with a lot of us. I've been Muslim 30, 40 years. How are you going to tell me that I don't have the proper Islamic belief? I understand. When I saw you, look like your last name was Islam. But you favor this other family I know, named Mushabi. If you're not them, you look like you. If you're not Mushabi, you look like you related to the Mujassims. You look like them a little bit. You don't really look like an Islam. What are you trying to say? sometimes a lot of us have been fed what looks like Islam, what is purported to be Islam, but when you look around the Muslim world, historically, going back, and around the world, you will find out, for a lot of us here, we are the anomaly. If I ask some of you, and don't talk, it's Jumu'ah. If I ask some of you, do Allah have hands? You're going to say, yeah, he got hands. And I say, how is it that you're going to say Allah got hands when Allah says in the Quran, Laysa kamithlihi shay, that there's nothing like him? You're going to say, brother, Allah says in the Quran that he has hands. And then you're going to open up the Quran and you're going to show me an English translation, and they translated a word as hand. They translated the Arabic word yed as hand. And I'm going to say, brother, hand is not an Arabic word. Hand is not in the Quran. And you're going to say, well, I don't understand Arabic. The one who translated it knows more than you. And I'm going to tell you that the word you're referring to is the Arabic word yed. And I can even quote to you hadith where the word yed is used. Well, what does yed mean? Said the apparent meaning of the word yed is hand. See, Allah has hands. And we're going to tell you, no. Just like English word, just like the English word hand. There's appropriate ways and times to use the word hand. If a brother's carrying a box in the masjid, and I say, brother, give him a hand, you're not going to say, hold up, it might take some time, it may hurt, let me cut it off, and give it to him. You're going to know, obviously, I don't mean it like that. You're going to know, I mean, help him out. Or if we're watching a show, and I say, come on, everybody give him a hand. Everybody's not going to pull out a sword and start cutting. No, you're going to clap. And that's in English. Likewise, in Arabic, words have a lot of meanings. And the rule of thumb that we pointed out in the first part of the khutbah, that Allah is not like his creation. So when Allah attributes himself with something, like the word yed in Arabic, if you understand the Islamic principle, what do? The first thing you do is say, okay, Allah is not like his creation. I don't know what he's trying to communicate, but Allah means what he meant, and I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm not going to translate it. I'm not going to add nothing to it. I'm just going to leave it like that. Allah said yet, he meant yet. In Arabic, you call that tafweed. And then, if you don't want to do that, the scholars have what they call interpreting, ta'wil. Like there's a hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Yadullah al-Jamaa'ah. The yad of Allah is over or with the Jamaa'ah. And a lot of times you see people translate that wrongfully, literally. The hand of Allah is with the Jamaa'ah. A'udhu billah. Allah is not like his creation. Allah never said he has hands. And some of you may be sitting here thinking, oh, see, this is why we got to learn Arabic. It's a problem because they translate in English. No, they're doing it in Arabic too. They will say things like, Allah has a yad, haqiqatan, literally, in Arabic. So it's not just an English-Arabic problem. But when you read the commentators of that hadith, Yadullah al-Jamaa'ah, they will tell you, there's no like, okay, this believers going to get together, we're going to have a Jamaa'ah, and if we look up, we're going to see a hand. No! Allah's protection is with the community. Allah's victory is with the community. The commentators on the hadith, they do ta'wil. They say in this particular circumstance, the Prophet ﷺ, what he meant by that is Allah's protection and his victory is with the community. They don't do it literally. There's some of us that believe that Allah literally has a shin. You know this part of your ankle? That Allah literally has a face. Why? Because the Arabic word wajh, it means literally face. And Allah in the Quran refers to his wajh. But let me show you how you've been deceived. You know in Sahih Bukhari, there's a book of tafsir in Sahih Bukhari, commentating on the Quran. And one of the verses where Allah mentions wajh is in Surah Al-Qasas, chapter number 28. Chapter number 28. And Imam Bukhari mentions the verse. And then he comments on it. It's the chapter heading. And he says, in this verse, the word wajh could mean Allah's dominion. Everything will perish except his wajh. The people who translated that hadith, Bukhari, in their translation of the Quran, it will say everything will perish except his face. In Sahih Bukhari, where that verse is commented on, they didn't translate it. They left it in Arabic. Because they didn't want you to know that Imam Bukhari doesn't believe that Allah has a literal face. He said that wajh means in this situation, Allah's dominion, his mulk. But they didn't translate that in English. And we have Sahih Bukhari right here in this masjid. If you don't believe me, we can go look right after Jumu'ah. There's some people that want you to think Allah is like his creation. And then some people say, well, yes, he has a hand, but we don't know how his hand is. No, there is no how. That's not appropriate. You wouldn't even accept that for your mother. I'm going to give you a real crude and real foul example. If I said to you, your mother's a whore, you would say, what? You're going to want to fight. I said, no, chill. She's a whore in a manner that befits her majesty. Wait, what? There's nothing majestic about being a whore. What do you think? Allah's not like his creation. He said, no. He's like his creation. He got hands and stuff, but in a manner that befits his majesty. You wouldn't accept that about your mother, but you accept it with regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in conclusion, we're going to, in the very near future, we're going to cover the Aqidah of Imam Tahawi. It's a basic text in creed, Islamic belief. But one of the things that he mentions in that text, and this is very important, because I know a lot of you, you're not familiar with these things. These are just names, whatever. Imam Tahawi is from the period of the Salaf, the third generation. One of his teachers was Imam Muzani, Imam al-Muzani. And one of his teachers was Imam al-Shafi'i. And one of his teachers was Imam Malik. And one of his teachers was Imam al-Nafi. And one of his teachers was Abdullah ibn Umar, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. May Allah be pleased with him and his father Umar ibn al-Khattab. And you know Abdullah ibn Umar, one of his teachers was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Imam Tahawi has a well-known worldwide text on Aqidah, the book of belief, basic Islamic belief. And he mentions in that text, وَمَنْ وَصَفَ اللَّهَ بِمَعْنٍ مِنْ مَعَانِ الْبَشَرِ فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. Whoever attributes a meaning to Allah from among the meaning of creation has disbelieved. So the thing that will protect us from that is always remembering, Laysa kamithlihi shay. Allah is not like his creation. There's nothing like him. But it's hard for a lot of us to believe because we're like that baby who was stolen at birth, and this is the only family we know. I grew up with them. I don't know any other family. You say I look like a Smith. I don't know no Smiths. But one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't make for haram for us is the ability to think. Allah, because you're a Muslim, Allah does not take away from you the ability to think. And a lot of times we don't want to think because if we get to the natural conclusion, it's going to be painful. If you do that DNA test, if you do the research, you're going to find out that the mother that you loved all the time, the father that you grew up with, you know, the big sister that changed your diapers when you was little is not even your family. And that may hurt you. And that's the same way with a lot of us in Islam. The Islam we thought we know ain't Islam. And usually when somebody has that type of revelation in their mind, it's sadness, then it's intense anger. Like, who tricked me like this? Who did this to me? But let that anger motivate you. And don't be like the person who doesn't think. You know, sometimes we abandon our intellect because it involves the thing that we love. You may be married to a woman. And you know she gets off at work at 6 o'clock every evening. But she don't never get home till 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You're looking at the bank statements. You know, hotel, you know, Days Inn. You know, Redneck Trucker Motor Inn. The Holiday Inn. Right? Where's she going to all this hotel staying at? You know, Zales Jewelry. She ain't buy me no jewelry. You seeing all these charges. Her schedule is not consistent. You know, you got the tracking on the car. You said, where was you last night? You said, oh, I did overtime at work. But her locator on the car says she was at the hotel. Intellect tells you, duh, she's cheating on you, man. What other proof do you need? Like, no, see, I'm not even going to think about that because I love her, and it's maybe I just don't understand. Maybe the GPS didn't work right. And maybe all those hotel charges, you know, maybe the bank made a mistake. Brother, the money ain't there. The money went somewhere, right? No. She said she was at where she was at. And this is what a lot of us do. When we love something, we shut down our intellect. And because we love Islam, or what we thought was Islam, we shut down our intellect. And Allah doesn't demand that from you. He wants you to think. And we have to make sure that our belief, our Islam, is consistent with the Islam that was transmitted to us from our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is an uncomfortable truth for a lot of us. So just remember, if you didn't remember anything else from this khutbah, Laysa kamithlihi shay. There's nothing like him. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing like him. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. May Allah give us the proper belief and the proper understanding of him. May Allah make us proper and true Muslims. May Allah include us among Ahlu Jamaa'ah. May Allah forgive us our sins. ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم انت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك يا ذا الجلال والاكرام. سبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.